Episode 52 of the Pilot to Pilot podcast takes off now. Today's episode is brought to you by Cadence Aviation. Cadence Aviation makes premier headsets at a great price. If you're into aviation and you're just getting started, check out Cadence Aviation. You will not be disappointed. Also, Avination, check out AOPA for scholarships. The AOPA Foundation supports exceptional high school students, aspiring pilots, and current pilots each year with annual flight training scholarships of more than $1 million awarded through 4 programs. The last time to apply is April 2nd. And like I always say, you never know if you will be getting the scholarship, so always apply. You never know what might happen. What is going on, Avination, and welcome back to the Pilot to Pilot podcast. My name is Justin, and I am your host. Today, I'm talking with Stan from Levaero Aviation. Some of the things Stan and I talk about in today's podcast are how Stan had zero interest in aviation as a kid, even though his dad was heavily involved in the aviation industry. We talk about how and why Stan took his very first intro flight, how Stan is very thankful his dad didn't push him into aviation and he let aviation come to him, why you have to love the process of becoming an airline pilot or even just becoming into the aviation industry as a whole. It's very much a delayed gratification industry, and you have to put your time in and enjoy the process of becoming a pilot or involved in the aviation industry. How your first few hundred hours really mold you into the pilot you will become later in your career. We talk about general aviation as a whole in Canada and worldwide, how Stan learned quite quickly that he didn't want to be an Air Canada pilot and how he could still have a great career in aviation, how the aviation bug can be different for everyone, and how Stan went to Embry Riddle even though he didn't want to become a pilot. Avination, I hope you guys really enjoyed today's episode. If you do, please leave us a review on iTunes. Check out our website, pilottopilot.hq.com, Instagram @pilottopilot. If you have any feedback or if you'd like to be featured on an episode, email me at pilottopilot.hq@gmail.com. And as always, please check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/pilottopilot. That's where you can find stickers, future keychains, and some other stuff that I have working on. And it also helps support the podcast and help me create the best content possible. Avination, without further ado, I don't want to waste any more of your time. Here's Stan.
My name is Stan Kuliavas, and I'm the Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Levaero Aviation. And amongst other things, we are the Pilatus dealer in Canada.
Stan, what's going on, man? Thank you for coming on the Pilot to Pilot podcast. I look forward to talking with you today.
Just looking forward to it, man.
For sure. Now, the first time we met was up in Oshkosh, and it was just kind of like, just wanted to see what the PC-24 looked like and see the PC-12 and see how my old bay was doing since I got my new job.
Come on, man. That was a celebrity sighting for me. I'm at Oshkosh at the Pilatus booth, and I have an aviation celebrity walk into our display.
Yeah, right. That's funny. I still wear that hat all the time that you gave me. I love that hat.
Isn't that one of the coolest hats out there?
I need to make some Pilot to Pilot hats like that. I think that would do well.
Hey, I'll take one of those in trade for sure.
Sounds good, man. Well, hey, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about why you got into aviation. How young were you when you knew that you wanted to be involved in aviation or even flying itself?
I'll tell you what, my foray into aviation, I would say, is pretty different from most people out there. Most people that I work with or I talk to that are in the industry, they knew they wanted to be pilots. They knew they wanted to be around airplanes from a young age. They're little kids, and that's all they did is play around airplanes, have airplane toys, go to the airport, look at airplanes. It was the polar opposite for me. I had zero interest in airplanes as a kid.
That's hilarious.
It excited me literally zero. And what makes it even more odd is that my father has worked in aviation his entire career.
Oh, wow.
And so, I was surrounded by it. I had no interest in it whatsoever. My father would come back from some business trips and, bring me a little airplane toy or model or something. And that's cool. And I appreciated that. But the fact that it was an airplane did nothing for me.
Right.
My friends would come over, my elementary school friends, they'd come over and they'd want to talk to my dad about airplanes. They didn't want to hang out with me. And I'm like, what's going on here?
That's pretty funny.
And so, all the high school courses I took were pretty sort of hardcore science based, and in my head, sports injuries doctor is what I wanted to be. And, I played a lot of sports growing up and unfortunately got injured a lot. And it was just interesting to me on, how doctors did what they did. And I thought, this is what I'm doing. And so I started, university up in Canada, doing that, and pretty quickly realized that it wasn't for me. I mean, I think that's one of the great things about college and university is, not knowing necessarily what your end career is going to be going into it, and just going in and trying some stuff out. And for me, I was fortunate pretty quickly to realize that, you know what, maybe this hardcore science route is probably not the one for me. Challenge is, as an 18-year-old kid at that point, you're going, well, what else do I do? This is all I've been thinking about. And so, didn't do, I did a lot of soul searching, and had a lot of conversations with my parents. And, my father at one point said, why don't you just go to the local airport and take an intro flight there? See if you like it.
Right.
And, and I, to this day, anybody that asks me, I credit my father for me being in the aviation industry because he never, ever pushed me into it.
Exactly.
You hear a lot of stories about parents pushing kids into something and then those kids not really doing it, but not really liking it. They're only doing it out of pressure. He never pushed me into it. And I think that's a huge reason why I am so passionate about it today. And so,
yeah.
There's one Saturday I woke up and it was a nice day out, and I wasn't tired, and I took a taxi to the local airport and I walked into this flying club hangar that, probably had seen some better days in World War II, but, Then I walked up and I went to the counter and said, I'd like to do an intro flight.
Yeah.
He said, sure, fill out this form and give me a credit card and wait right there.
Yeah, we'll swipe that card first before you go on any airplane.
First, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
So, you fill out the forms, you walk out. This guy is giving you a walk around with this airplane that you're going, this thing flies.
Yeah.
And, it was like I think it was a 1968 172.
Okay.
And
it's brand new.
You know what? In flight training terms, that's a brand new airplane. You're right.
Brand new, man.
And, we do the walk around, and I'm starting to get a little bit excited, a little bit nervous, a little excited. And, I get into this tin can and I'm in the left seat and he's talking me through all kinds of stuff. And, this is where your feet go. This is what the rudder pedals do. And, this is what the yoke does. Here's the power and trim, and I'll talk you through everything. Don't worry. I said, okay. So we start the airplane and we start taxiing around a little bit, do our run up, and, we position on the runway, and he's like, all right, man, feet on the pedals, and, let's go, push the power in nice and easy, and I'll tell you when to pull back, and let's go flying. And I thought, yeah, right. Easy as that. Right. And so we do start rolling down the runway. He's like, pull back. And, people talk about when did they get bit by the bug? It was that moment right there for me when we had just lifted off and I looked to the left outside my window and I saw the shadow start forming under the main. And I thought, wow. Yeah. I used a couple different words in my head, but I said, wow.
I'm in the air. That. I can fly.
Right. And I'm like, I did that. This is so cool. I need to do more of this. Yeah. And we did, and it was awesome. It was fun. And right away, there was no doubt in my mind, this is what I was doing. And immediately, all thoughts swirling in my head. I'm like, all right, at the time I said, I'm going to become a senior captain at Air Canada. I'm going to fly the heavies. I'm going to make so much money. And
everyone's going to love me. They're all going to want to be like me.
Yeah, come on. And that's where it started.
That's awesome. I liked how you said earlier that your dad didn't really push aviation on you, because my dad's an airline pilot. He flies for American Airlines, and he never once pushed aviation on me. He was always, kind of do whatever you want to do. I was highly involved with sports, so it sounds like you were too. I thought I was going to go pro in the NFL, maybe baseball, whatever. I was all about sports, and I never once thought about aviation. He was a pilot, would come and speak to our show and tells. He'd take us on field trips before 9/11 when you can go to the airport with all your class, and aviation was just didn't really care. Didn't care about planes, didn't care about anything. And it wasn't until I found out on my own that I wasn't going pro because I wasn't good enough. But it wasn't until then that I figured out that aviation was what I actually wanted to do. And I'm glad I did, because I didn't know what else I could do. Business was boring to me. Kind of all that other kind of stuff was really boring to me. All the classes I took at Ohio State. So if it wasn't for my dad or my grandpa being in aviation, I wouldn't have even thought about that kind of job aspect and that possibility of a career.
I mean, it's funny how stuff comes together. And look, in the sports side, you played at a much higher level than I did. I mean, it's, I coached college basketball, but cool. You played college football and, had the opportunity to at least have that conversation of going pro. I think my odds of going pro sort of kind of went to zero after the 8th grade.
Yeah, I think mine did too. I just didn't realize it. Once I got to college and I saw the quarterbacks in front of me, I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. It's like, that's not a thing. There go my $1 million. I'll have to find another way to make it.
Airline pilot.
Yeah, right. Airline pilot.
Did you go flying as a kid with your dad?
No, never. Let's see. Never flew in a small plane. Never went to a small airport with him, really. After September 11th, the week after September 11th, he took me on a trip of his. That's probably the first time I was on a plane that he was flying. So, travel baseball, basketball, and playing football, kind of life gets in the way. And I think he didn't want to shove it down my throat because, like you said earlier, you're going to get burned out really fast. It happened to me with other sports. I was forced into playing baseball. I hated baseball. I got burnt out and I wanted to quit. Yeah. And aviation's tough. You got to want to do this. You can't just be out here kind of thinking it's going to be the perfect aviation or the perfect career choice or the perfect lifestyle, because you're really going to want to have to love it. Because, like you said, you were going to be an Air Canada pilot. You're going to fly the heavies. You're going to be super rich, but that wouldn't even happen until your last 5 years of flying in aviation. So, it's definitely a process. So the love has to be there. And I'm very thankful that he didn't force it on me, because who knows what I'd be doing right now.
Yeah. I think you hit it right on the head there. It's about loving the process. I don't think I don't think you can get into it for an end game into anything that you do. I think you got to love the process of what you do. Right. Because what you think you're going to do on day zero and what you end up doing along the way, man, oh man, aren't those different?
Exactly. 100% different. And I think it's just like, you asked Tom Brady, you asked Drew Brees, who I compare this to would be football, because that's the sport I played the most, but they love the process. They love Mondays. They love Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. They love the process before the big game. And your big game is going to be you flying for the airlines, you flying for a regional, you doing whatever you want to do in your life. But you need to prepare yourself for that, and you need to sacrifice, and you need to do the necessary steps to be the best pilot you are now, because your first 100, 200 hours, that's where you're going to really mold yourself into the pilot you're going to be and how you react to the emergencies down the line. Because, there are going to be emergencies. It's an airplane. It's a mechanical. It's an engine. A lot of moving parts. Something's going to break.
It's a tin can in the air, man.
It's not all going to go perfect. I've had 2 emergencies in my short career. So, it's going to happen. And how you react and what you learn in those first couple 100 hours are really going to shape who you're going to be as a pilot. So I don't know how we started talking about that, but yeah, you really need to prepare yourself in that. What was I say? You're from Canada. So I've talked to one other Canadian pilot, Jeffrey the pilot, and he kind of touched a little bit on the process of becoming a pilot in Canada and the differences, but he never really touched on general aviation in itself. Is general aviation in Canada as strong of a community as it is in the US, or is it not the same? What's the differences, or what's the similarities in the two?
I'll go so far as to say that general aviation in the world is a strong community. Globally, like, you think about it, you meet somebody anywhere and you're at some cocktail party or wherever you are, you're at a Halloween thing, and all of a sudden somebody tells you you're a pilot. Guess what? You're not talking to anyone else that night. Right. You're talking to that person, and you guys are swapping stories. It's one of those. Wow, there you go. It's one of those things. I think one, sort of more generally speaking, being in the aviation industry, if you work in it, and then just micro down from that, if you're a pilot or if you are a professional pilot, I think those are almost like fraternities. I think that there's this common sort of love for one another and common respect when you're in that environment. And we have that in Canada, no question. The reality is we have just so many less people and less airplanes and less pilots in our country than you do. So the scale is different. But the sense of community certainly is not. I'll go to some of my local airports, smaller airports around where I live, or around Ontario. And on a Saturday, I mean, I love going and having breakfast at an airport, at a small airport. Like you wake up early in the morning, even if I'm not going to go flying that day, you go there and just, you go have your bacon and eggs and breakfast sandwich and just listen to stories, because there's always those old pilots hanging around, talking, whether it's war stories, whether it's, commercial airlines back in the day, or all the cool different stuff they flew, and they are happy to have you listen to them, to all their stories. They're happy to share, and they're really happy to provide advice. I mean, I in all of my experience, I've seen anytime that you ask anyone for help in that GA community, people are so willing to help, and it's such a nice thing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's funny to talk about the war stories from the guys, from the guys that flew in war. I'm sure those stories have been embellished a couple of times from what actually happened, but you know how things go throughout the years. But it is
like
interesting.
It's like fishing, right?
Yeah,
it's like fishing.
The fish was so big. It's like, was it?
I'll tell you what, though. Anytime anyone's flown in the war, I mean, I got nothing to say against
100%.
that.
I'll believe everything they say, and I'll be sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for the story.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I have flown to a couple small airports in Canada. The smallest one was Medicine Hat near Calgary. Yeah. I don't know if that's like a prominent airport or like a popular place to go, but we took a businessman out to Medicine Hat, and I was kind of like, oh, cool. I'm in Medicine Hat, Canada. Who would have ever thought I'd end up here?
Come on, we have Medicine Hat, Moose Jaw, Moose Factory. Like we got the best names up here.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I would love to go to Moose Jaw Airport.
Yeah,
I don't know. Montana might rival you, though. There's one airport there called Anaconda, Montana. So, I mean, you got some rivalries down up in the north part of the U.S. too.
Love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about your training. So you took that intro flight, and you said you got the bug. Well, the bug can be different for a lot of people. It can be kind of what you said, how you want to be an Air Canada pilot. Did you end up going further down that road, or did you get your private and then stop, or kind of what was the process for you to lead to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, that it's different for everyone. For me, it was, I was full on focused to, here I go, I'm private license, commercial, everything. Let's go. And airline pilot. What do I need to do to become an airline pilot? And that was the track that I was on. And I would say, quite quickly, I would say within the first month or two of my flight training. I mean, look, the first month you're so excited, you can't wait to be in the airplane in the air, and that's all I'm thinking about, right? It's just, it consumes me. I'm at home, I'm at my college house hanging out with buddy. All I can think about is, when is the next time I get to go flying again? And I would say probably within the first month or two, there were a couple weekends, it happened the first time, I didn't think much about it, and then there are a couple weekends that popped up where the weather was beautiful. It was perfect weather to fly. And I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to go.
That's a red flag.
Right. And I'll tell you what, it's not because I didn't like airplanes at this point. It's not because I didn't love flying at this point. I just didn't want to go for some reason that day. And I thought, I wonder what this means. And I fairly quickly figured out that I want to fly when I want to fly. I don't want to fly every day because I have to.
Right.
I want to fly because I want to. And to me, that was right there. That was you call it a red flag. I call it, I was so happy to figure that out. I'm probably not made to be a professional pilot, if that's the case, because as and you can explain better than anyone, is, your schedule is not yours.
No,
you are, if it's an airline, it's a little bit more structured and dictated. You're flying corporate, you're at the whim of, your employer on any given day, or your aircraft owner, et cetera. And so I figured out that flying as a career is probably not what I want to do, except I said, there's no way I'm giving up on my flight training, because I love this. Like, I still want to do this. And so then I got to that sort of a bit of a roadblock of, okay, well, I was so fired up about this, and I thought that this is what I was doing. What now? Because in my head, you're in aviation, you're a pilot or you're not, right? Right. What else is there to do in aviation? And so again, I credit my father for this. We had some long conversations about the avenues within aviation. And he said, and I said, look, I'm sort of in the science program still. I'm taking a bunch of business courses. I love now my business courses that I'm taking. I'd never taken business classes before, but I'm taking these classes and it's really, really interesting to me. And so I said, well, what do I do? How do I combine this stuff? I'm really still into airplanes and aviation. And I'm liking these new business courses I'm taking. I don't know what to do. And he said, well, why don't you go check out this school called Embry Riddle? And he said they might have something, sort of up your alley. By the way, that's where I went to college. I could not believe up to that point. I think we probably had a conversation or two along the way, but I never really had sort of that conversation that I can remember of, I know where my dad went to college.
That's hilarious. Oh, by the way, I went to Embry Riddle. Oh,
by the way, right?
Yeah, cool.
And, oh, by the way, I played on the school soccer team there. But, I didn't know any of this stuff. I mean, and maybe I did, but it didn't resonate with me. And so I said, okay. And, I jumped online and started checking out programs there. And sure enough, pretty quickly, I found their Bachelor of Science business of aviation business. And like that just jumped out at me. It spoke to me. I thought, man, this combines both passions that I now have. And this is what I need to do. And, it wasn't an easy decision. One, I was going to leave the school where I was at, and friends I'd made along the way. And then two, I mean, it's not a small financial commitment. And, so I was very fortunate to have the support, of my parents in every way that they could. And, I took a bunch of online classes initially, through Embry Riddle, which was phenomenal. Their online program is great. And so I got to catch up on a lot of the, sort of introductory aviation type of courses, that I needed to take as part of prerequisites for a degree from that school. And so I got to do those from home online. And then, I spent, a school year down there.
Which campus?
Daytona Beach.
Okay.
And so, I spent a school year down there, finishing my undergrad degree.
What was that like?
Oh, it's going to school in Florida in the beautiful weather. What was that like?
Oh yeah, I forgot you're from Canada. So it's a big difference.
It's a little bit of a difference. I'll tell you what, it was. I loved it. It was. Weather aside, that speaks for itself. But it was. I tell people now that. I'm quite involved with the alumni department there, and then especially with the athletics. And that's a whole other conversation I'm happy to get into if we want. But that school did a lot of good for me. And, I tell people, if you're into hotel and restaurant management, it's probably the worst school on the planet to go to. If you're into anything aviation related, I challenge you to find, an environment that is so immersive into that subject area. Just walking around campus, everything is, it doesn't matter if you're in a psychology course, if you're in engineering, if you're in business, etc. Everything has an aviation spin to it. And it's fascinating to see so many people in one campus that are, generally speaking, all into the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's pretty motivating to be quite honest.
Would you say it is worth the cost of Embry Riddle? Because I know Embry Riddle is ridiculously expensive. And if you're not going to be a pilot, is it still just as expensive or is it a little bit more affordable?
It's certainly less expensive if you're not going to be a pilot.
Yeah.
I don't have the figures, but I'd say it's almost half the cost of what a pilot
so it's more like a normal school then?
Still a private school. So you're going to, you're still paying private, university college fees. I can answer for myself. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was absolutely worth the investment, into myself and into my education. No question. I would absolutely do it over again.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. I think I've had one person on here that went to Riddle. We didn't really go too much into it. I think they went there to be a pilot, But yeah, I mean, Riddle is definitely an option. Like we said, it is an expensive option. But if you want to be surrounded by aviation, if you know you want to be in aviation, it's like you said, they have every single class you could ever imagine. All the classes that any normal university would have, but they spin it toward aviation. So if you want to be in aviation and you want to see everything that you can do in aviation, then Riddle is maybe the place for you. I went to Ohio State and we had very select classes that are about aviation. I mean, we still had business aviation. We had aviation communications. We had all the normal aviation classes, but Riddle, I'm sure, is just 10 times the amount of aviation classes you could take.
I mean, where most universities and colleges have an aviation department, that entire school is the aviation department. That's crazy. It's. I mean, but look, Ohio State's, the Purdue. I mean, all the North Dakotas. That's they've got legit aviation programs. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with those either.
No, there's not. When I was at Ohio State, though, it was not good. The president there wanted to get rid of the department. We used to have an aviation building. They tore it down to build an engineering building. And then Ohio State is one of the only schools. I think there's one other school that owns and operates their own airport. And they tried to get shut down the airport, but they quickly realized that once the FAA puts some money into it, you can't shut down an airport. So they, unfortunately for them, which they wanted to shut it down, they were forced to keep it open, and they had either we'll just ride this out until we can shut it down, or we can invest some money into it and we can really go forward. And thankfully they decided to invest some money into it, and now it's right up there with the bigger schools. It's up there with I always want to say Notre Dame, with the North Dakotas, with all those schools. So it's definitely a school that is an option to go to, but it was definitely in a different place when I was there.
Different priorities.
Yeah, way different priorities. I mean, I had different priorities then too. I wasn't there for necessarily my education either at the time. I was there because I wanted to play football, but it was still, it's a lot better now, and I really like where it's going. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily Embry Riddle, but it is another option that you have there.
I mean, look, again, Embry Riddle is not the only option out there for sure. I mean, it was the option that was the right one for me. Yeah. But like you said, the Ohio States, the UNDs. I mean, those are all really, really good schools
for sure. So you are now at Embry Riddle. You've realized that you don't want to be an Air Canada heavy pilot making millions of dollars. What was kind of the next step? How long? You said you were at Embry Riddle for a year before you could finish your degree. What was after your degree? What did you do next? What kind of jobs did you get into? What were you looking for?
Here, I'll throw you a wrench now, and now it gets interesting.
Dun, dun, dun.
So I'm at Embry Riddle. It's in my first couple weeks, I would say, of being there, late August. And, I mentioned basketball was always a big part of my life growing up. Yeah. And, I had the opportunity to play in Canada and in the US in tournaments and even go to Europe to play a little bit, when I was younger. And so it was a huge part of me, and my life up to that point. And I had always in my head had the goal of, I wanted to be a college basketball coach. It was just on the sort of the bucket list of things almost. Yeah. And, I knew that I wanted to do it, but I hadn't thought too much about it. And surprisingly to most people, Embry Riddle has an exceptional athletics department.
Exceptional on what level?
So facilities wise, if you two are there, I'm telling you, it is better than most Division I. I'm not talking about the Ohio States, the Kentuckys, the North Carolinas, but most people don't. When they hear Division I, people hear, they think that it's, glitz and glam and fantastic. I mean, you go to some of those lower Division I school facilities, and I mean, you're thinking that you're playing out of high school gyms. Right. It's nothing to write home about. The facilities at Embry Riddle are phenomenal. Basketball gym and baseball and softball and track and tennis there. It rivals, I would say, the vast majority of Division I schools from a facility standpoint. Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, it's worth the tour. And then from a program standpoint, I was specifically focused on basketball, and a few years before I was there, I'm dating myself a little bit, but a few years before I was there, they had won a national championship. Oh, cool. And so, I went to go speak to the head coach, Coach Ritter, and and I shared with him my desire to learn really more than anything else. And I wanted to hang around practices, and I wanted to, I started coaching back home in Canada. I started coaching kids, and I found that I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to get better. And so I was hoping to hang around a little bit and just learn, from a successful college coach. And fortunately, he's one of those guys that, when he sees passion in people, he's that fuel to the fire, he said, absolutely, come hang out at practice. And to make a long story short, that hanging out at practice turned into helping them out a little bit here and there with some stats and then some practice stuff. And then eventually turned into myself joining their coaching staff that year. And so I was an assistant on the staff for 3 years.
Oh, dang.
And it was a phenomenal experience. Learned a ton, as a person, as a basketball coach, and made some, lifelong friendships. So that was sort of, what I initially went down there was, I'm here and I'm studying aviation, and I'm going to go to practice when it fits my class schedule. That sort of very quickly became, I can go to class when it fits my basketball schedule. But, you know how that works. Yeah. And so we don't have to get into that too much more, but
no, we're good.
No, it's, it's one of those things where I was, I say it sort of jokingly. It's not one of those things where I was, slacking or dropping at school. It's just, I found a way to balance both, and I was really fortunate to be able to do both of those things in one place. And so I'd finished my undergrad in that first year, and then had the opportunity to stay on staff after that first year. And so I started into my MBA in aviation at Embry Riddle. Mm-hmm. It's something that I did for those 2 years there, and a little bit after. It's not something I eventually ended up finishing. Just, work started becoming my full-time job. And, in that time, sort of, I think I've sort of attained 3 real world MBA type of things, if I can put it that way. It's a bit of a regret of mine that I didn't finish the paper version of it, but it's one of those things that just wasn't part of my life plan, I guess. And, but you know what? So that was sort of my next forest. That was my next, job per se, getting paid in clothes and chicken fingers and all that kind of stuff. Right. And so, but I was just happy to be there and learn and be around and just soak it all in. And so that was my next step, Florida wise. And then after Florida, I go back home to Canada, and you let me know when we want to talk about that.
Let's go. Let's move to Canada. So we're in Canada now. What's up now?
I leave the Florida weather, and I come back to Toronto. And
terrible decision.
It is, well, it's a beautiful city, which happens to be getting the worst winter on record. And I'm thinking, what in the world did I just do here?
What year was that?
Oh, man, that was 2006.
Okay.
And so I leave the beach for snow up to my waist. Like, come on, like, you're a dummy. What are you doing?
Florida sounds great right now.
Yeah. And so, I come home and I'm helping coach my high school basketball team. My former coaches knew that I was back. And so I got involved with that, and that was a lot of fun. And then sort of that first phone call comes along, job wise, and a fractional ownership company up here in Canada heard that I'd finished Embry Riddle and I was back, and potentially looking for jobs, and so they reached out, and we had a bunch of conversations, and one thing sort of led to another, and ended up being hired as I don't even know what my title was in the beginning, but it was junior coffee guy, type of thing. It was, joking aside, it was a very junior sales role. That fractional company had, of all things, PC-12s and Citation Excels.
Okay.
And so that was my first foray into aviation as a career. I was based in Toronto, reporting to the president of the company, who was, based in Kitchener, about an hour away.
In the Kitchener.
Okay. Yeah.
Picked up freight there.
There you go. And so that area is a bit of our tech triangle. And so, my job was to basically to prospect, to lead generate, and to, find new fractional owners, in Eastern Canada. And, I to this day, if anybody asks me, I give those guys so much credit for hiring, a kid out of school that was green and had absolutely no experience in aviation, into a sales role, and very, very quickly putting a lot of responsibility on me.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge reason why I was able to grow my career, is the trust that they put into me. And I am I am so thankful for the opportunity to this day that they provided me with. And so that started my first, steps into aviation as a career.
So you got your first job in aviation, kind of, I haven't had a sales job in aviation. So what did that entail? What was your day like, your week like? What did you do?
I mean, when I started, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
All I know is I'm supposed to sell fractions of airplanes.
Yeah. What's a fraction?
Yeah. Oh, like, all right. So, I mean, I'll tell you what, initially it was, soaking in as much as I could,
right,
about the company, the concept of fractional ownership, the airplanes that we're offering, as part of that model. And it's not it's less the how does this airplane fly, and talk about the avionics and how those work. But I'll tell you what, having a pilot's license was invaluable.
Right.
I mean, that helped a ton credibility wise, being able to speak, not that I could fly an Excel or a PC-12, but being able to relate a little bit. I mean, most fractional owners, as you know, they get in and they turn right. They don't get in and turn left.
Right.
That airplane is they're flying boardroom, or they're flying boardroom. Yeah, it's a business tool or it's a family tool, one or the other, and very rarely are they pilots. And so having a pilot's license absolutely helped. And initially for me, it was, soak in the knowledge, learn as much as I can, especially in that first year. Don't pretend that I'm an expert or know a lot of stuff. And then eventually try and get in front of some people. And, and then it's how do I prospect? Where do I prospect? How do I then get in front of these people? How do I get a meeting with these, Fortune 50 CEOs, and,
right.
I'm a kid, right? Like I'm 26 years old at the time. And so, how do I do that? And so it was a huge learning experience. And oh, by the way, very shortly after my starting at the company, our president moves back out west to Calgary. So, and so, I mean, look, from a support standpoint, the support is all still there. I just physically become the one salesperson in that area.
Oh, perfect.
And so it's no longer, hey, you're helping me and lead generating this type of stuff. It's, you got to go from zero to close with all of these prospects and customers. And so how do I do that? I mean, and to me, again, it was learning. I was reading every little sales thing I could, and I struggled I couldn't even tell you what those books or articles or anything those are called right now, but just conceptually, I was trying to soak in as much information, as many different ideas as I could at the time, and just kind of trying to put in the work and for lack of a better term, pay my dues, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing I've noticed, and this is the advice I offer to people that are starting in the industry now. Whether it's a pilot job, whether it's a sales job or an engineering role, whatever it is, in the beginning, don't be afraid to work and pay your dues. Your contract is going to say you have a 40-hour-a-week job or whatever it is. Don't pretend like, if you want to get good at what you're doing, you can't work that minimum.
Yeah, so you have to put in the bare minimum. You got to put in more.
Way more. Yeah. If you want to be successful, look, there are people that want to punch a clock, and I'm not here to judge that. I'm the furthest thing from being able to in a position to judge anyone. If you want to punch a clock and it's just a means to an end, so be it. But if you want to get really good at what you do, if you want to be a subject matter expert or operational expert, you got to put in more than the bare minimum. And that's, I'm fortunate to have mentors around me that kept reinforcing that to me. And so that's what I did, and I just try to learn as much as I can. I still try to learn as much as I can. I don't pretend to be an expert in any way right now, but early on I was doing a lot of that. And, and so I ended up, working in the fractional world for 5 years.
Oh, dang. I think it's cool that you said that you like to keep learning, because I think that even if you are in aviation, or if you are just whatever you're doing in your career, it doesn't have to be aviation based. It's just always try to learn something new, because if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. That's what they always told us in football. It's either taking a step forward or you're taking a step back. There's no maintaining. There's no staying in the middle. It's either one or the other, and someone else is out there putting in the work. And this whole thing is all on you. Life, aviation, sports, whatever, it's all on you. You put in the amount of work, and then you will get all that results back based on how much you put in. So don't go crying to anyone else when someone else might get this regional job before you did when you started your training at the same time, because they busted their butt to get all the training done. It all comes down to you and how much effort and work you're going to put into it. So I really like that you said that, because you always got to keep learning. You always got to keep working, put in more than you need to put in, and continually show up.
Yeah, no doubt. And to your point, even if you're in aviation, all your learning doesn't need to be all in the aviation space. I think it's all just continually challenging yourself, right? And broadening your mind and your knowledge and understanding of all kinds of different stuff. I mean, it all contributes in the end.
Oh, for sure. And one thing too is once you try new things, it's like when I first did the podcast, after I did my first 4 and I had probably 60 people listen to it, and I was like, well, this sucks. This is like, I could either give up now and not continue because no one's listening, and it felt like no one would ever listen to this, or I could continue to put in the work and continue to release some content and just continue to work hard, because eventually you're going to build your followers and your listeners, and you're going to build kind of a community in itself. And I'm glad that I did, because now here we are today talking to you and talking to some other cool people. So, but continue to put in the work. Don't give up when the initial and immediate results aren't where you want them to be, because that's just impossible. It's very, very few people become the number one listened to podcast. I'm not nearly up there, nowhere near close, but you got to continue to put in the work to where you want to be, and everything else will follow through.
So I got a question for you.
What's up?
How long did it take you before you hit a bit of a critical mass with your listeners?
It probably took 6 months. So I started doing it in February, and I didn't really take it serious until 6 months. And my first big break was Stabilizer Motion and the Drizzle. And then once I got to interview those two, then Pilot Maria found my podcast and she started playing it. And funny enough, I was actually in China when she was listening to my podcast and gave me all these shout outs. So I had no cellular service or I had no access to Wi-Fi to access it and kind of capitalize on it. So I was just sitting there just like, oh crap. I got back 2 weeks after my trip. I was in China for 2 weeks and I was like, oh dang, that's cool. And I was like, wait, I can't capitalize on this at all. But it was probably about 6 months afterwards when I started getting some recognition and some followers and some, I don't know, reviews on iTunes and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, good for you, man. It's look, you talk about not being, in the top 10 or whatever podcast. I mean, I think striving for that it's part of that process, right? I mean, you're continually striving to be better, but I think in the end, it's all about providing value.
Agreed.
And whether that viewership is 60,000 or 60, if you're providing value to people and you're enjoying the process of what you're doing, man, you're winning. Like that's, if your goal is to be number one, I mean, in striving to be number one and provide value along the way, I mean, you tell me what you're doing wrong. I mean,
No, I completely agree. You can, and the cool thing about the way the social media is, the internet is that everyone can provide value. Everyone has a platform. Everyone can kind of voice their opinions. And I encourage everyone to do that, to make themselves vulnerable, to put themselves out there, because that's when you truly start growing. That's when you truly start kind of reaching the goals that you want to reach, is when you make yourself vulnerable, when you kind of put yourself out there and just say the things that you might not think that anyone wants to hear, but you actually might be helping someone out.
No doubt. I think that's a really great way to look at it.
Yeah, man. Well, let's go ahead and continue back to the aviation side. And so you're at, I always pronounce it wrong, Levaero.
You got it, man. Levaero Aviation.
You are now at Levaero Aviation, where you are a Pilatus dealer. Let's talk about that and kind of how you were able to connect with Pilatus, why Pilatus, and kind of just talk about your journey there.
So, as I mentioned at my fractional company, AirSprint, where I worked for 5 years, being around the PC-12 for those 5 years, the Pilatus dealer then It wasn't called Levaero at the time. We've rebranded to Levaero in the last several years, but, they gave me a ring and said, hey, we're looking for somebody to come run aircraft sales for us. And, for me, working in fractional was absolutely the right thing to do at the time. And I still have a real soft spot for it because I think it's a really cool offering that benefits a huge segment of the population. And so I think that concept is absolutely here to stay. For me personally speaking, my goal was to get into whole aircraft sales. The amount of, an experience and knowledge that I took out of fractional, in my mind, I was going to use that as a stepping stone, to get to whole aircraft sales. And that opportunity presented itself, through what's now Levaero. And they said, hey, why don't you come be our sales guy, in all of Canada, and you'll sell whole PC-12s now and throughout the entire country, and not fractions in a territory, but whole airplanes in the entire country. And I'll be honest, you get after 5 years, you either hate a place or you love a place, right? It's one of those things. And it was a really tough time for me to leave, where I was, because I love the people. I love their customers. I was truly passionate about the offering that we were providing and the value we were providing to people. And it was fun. And so it was really hard. But I took the leap and I jumped, and, it was a job that allowed me to home base still in Toronto, which, that was a big contributing factor. And, in the early stages, I'm not going to lie. And I share this with our shareholders at my current company today still. In those first couple months for me, there were a few days every week where I thought, am I doing the right thing? Yeah. Not because I didn't like where I now was. I love doing the new stuff, and I love the new challenge and the different customers and all that. Just when you get comfortable somewhere and you really liked it and you make it, change is hard, right? Change is hard, whether you're moving homes or whatever you're doing. Change is hard.
Sometimes necessary.
Hey, you're right. And for me, it was the right thing. But it takes a little bit, some people that, right away, they don't look back. And for me, it's, it took a little longer to not look back. But I've now been here. I looked on my LinkedIn, it popped up. I've been here. I think officially my start date was, I was hired in January. Well, it ended up sort of being January, but I took a little time to actually for some education stuff for another master's degree at the time. So I think I ended up starting either end of January or beginning of February. And so I've been here 8 years.
Dang, get it.
Right. And so, it flew by, and I talked with our shareholders about that. They were a little bit surprised I've been here 8 years, that it's been 8 years already. And I had no idea it was 8 years, and it's been awesome. It's been that next step in my professional and personal development. It's been a whole different set of challenges. I say that in a positive way. A whole different set of issues to sort of resolve on a daily basis, a whole different value offering to provide to people. And it's been great. And I've, throughout my entire aviation career, I have been with the Pilatus PC-12 since day one.
That's awesome. What a great plane to be associated with since day one. Tell me a little bit about the Pilatus and what you like about it. Because, obviously my followers know that I used to fly the Bay Lotus, and I love the Pilatus. Flew the 3rd, the 6th, and the 10th oldest ones, I believe, ever made. So we flew the old school ones. They're very tight or very heavy on the controls when you're going fast and you're low. It was a great plane, but I'm sure they've just improved now, which I would love to fly a new one eventually. But tell me kind of why you're attracted to the Pilatus and the mission of the Pilatus and why you love it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we got to get you into a brand new NG because, while I'm not checked out on one, I've had the opportunity to sit in the right seat, from time to time and actually done some pretty interesting trips with one. And they're a pleasure to fly, and a low time pilot like me can feel very comfortable in that cockpit. As you know, I mean, it's an airplane that was designed to be a single pilot flown airplane and operated unsupported in the field. So it's pretty unique in that sense. It's unlike some of the airplanes that people would deem competitive to it. It's not something that's, an iteration or, I don't know. I don't want to say a Band-Aid sort of fix too, but it's not a 1950s and 1960s design that's just been sort of tweaked. I mean, it's a net new airplane that came to the market in the sort of early to mid 90s, so you talk about fuel efficiency, you talk about aerodynamics, you talk about, safety, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a modern airplane, as compared to some of those that it gets compared to. And so, look, there is no bad airplane out there. Every airplane is a good airplane out there, and it's the right airplane for someone. Well, I'm not here to talk bad about any airplane. Every airplane is the right. I mean, listen, you're not the first one to tell me that. Yeah. But every airplane's the right airplane for someone. And the PC-12 isn't the right airplane for everyone, but its versatility and its mission flexibility makes it the right airplane for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. What do you kind of see the competition coming now, as Cessna has essentially made an identical copy to the PC-12? I think they claim maybe it can go 20 knots faster, 10 miles longer, all that nonsense, but it is essentially the same plane, is it not?
None of my education is in the engineering world. And so to speak to, any possibility for a very similar airframe to be dramatically different, I mean, professionally speaking, I can't tell you that's possible or not possible.
Right.
I think what it does is, in them making that airplane, I think it's the ultimate compliment to the Pilatus PC-12.
I would agree.
That, hey, we recognize that you have become the world leader in this segment, and we want to make something like it. And look, that manufacturer has been around also a long time, and they make good airplanes. Yeah. And they're going to make a good airplane.
I'm surprised that they waited so long to let Pilatus get such a market share on it, because it was very early on. People knew that this was going to be a pretty big hit.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to their strategy, but they're bringing something net new to the market that isn't without its. Look, we're in a world where we've brought something net new to the market in the Pilatus world, and they've got some more challenges. They're bringing in a product, to the market that has an unproven engine,
right.
And so I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just saying it's an extra layer of challenge.
Yeah, with 3D printable parts.
And so, I'm not smart enough to talk about that topic.
Oh, you don't have to. No, I was just pointing it out. That's the whole bang on that airplane or that engine, is that you can 3D print a part when it fails. So it's like, okay, interesting.
Right. That's interesting. And so I don't know. I mean, I think they're a little ways off still. I think you're going to see their sort of push be, hey, stay in the family type of thing. Mm-hmm. And we're, our goal is not to talk bad about them as a manufacturer or as a product. I think it's just to continue, educating people about the virtues and the versatility of the PC-12, because in my opinion today, I mean, there is no other airplane like it.
No, there's not. I mean, it can do everything it can, or it can do it at half the cost. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the direct operating cost is absolutely one of the reasons that people look at it. I mean, when you can fly around for $600 an hour, that's pretty unique.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I think we're at 270. Our fuel burn would be like 270 pounds per hour, and that was just like crazy. It's like we're sipping on gas up here.
Yeah.
I would fly from all on a duty day. I'd fly from Northeast Ohio. One time I picked up freight in Trenton, New Jersey, fuel stop in Nashville. Flew to Laredo, Texas to clear customs, and then flew down to Saltillo, which is about another hour flight in Mexico, and then flew back all on a duty day, all in like, I don't know, 9 hours, which that sounds like a long time, but if you put that on ForeFlight, you see the mileage recovered. It's pretty crazy.
I mean, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. We used and abused those airplanes, and I'm glad that they're built the way that they are because they could take it.
Right? Like, and it didn't know that you were trying to abuse it.
No, it was just chilling. It was like, all right, cool, let's go. Where do you want to go next? It's like, all right,
next.
Yeah, let's do it.
Next.
So you said that you have a kind of a cool story about flying in a PC-12, and I remember you kind of briefly touching on it when we were at Oshkosh about how, didn't you have to cross the pond in one?
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely a bucket list experience for me. We had a customer in Canada who I was helping buy or find a pre-owned PC-12 NG for, and the one that identified for him the best option was located in Germany. And, you know, and that's the whole thing with our business is, you know, while I'm based in Toronto and we're the Pilatus dealer in Canada, you know, whether it's us helping people find airplanes to acquire, whether it's a PC-12 or a Citation or a Gulfstream, whatever it is, I mean, aviation it's a global industry. And so, you know, I'm not just looking for airplanes in Canada to buy for a customer of mine. And so this one we found in Germany, and the pre-purchase inspection of that airplane was done at the factory in Switzerland, in Stans. And so myself and the chief pilot and the demonstration pilot at Levaero at the time, we went over to Europe to go finalize.
Gotta go over to Europe. Gosh darn it! I guess I'll go.
It was a business trip, so so we went there and did that, and so we landed in Switzerland. We went to the factory to just do a quick once over the airplane, and then we did the test flight portion of it. You know, in any pre-owned aircraft acquisition or generally aircraft acquisition, there's going to be a test flight portion to that purchase, and so that portion we did going from the factory to Germany. Just transactionally, we had to close that airplane in Germany. And so we landed in Germany, finished everything up, and then it was time to get that airplane back to Canada. And you know, and I got to be part of that, and that was so much fun. I mean, look, I give all the credit to that crossing to the captain that was flying, and I mean, I was very much a passenger in that experience, and I you know, he had done a bunch of these and was very experienced in it. I mean, I was there to, more than anything, video document a little bit and just sort of, like I said, soak it in. Right. And so, you know, and learn along the way. And I learned a ton, and, but it was awesome. And so that airplane, we left Dusseldorf, Germany, and then we went to, Wick, Scotland, which is at the very sort of northern tip of the Highlands there. Mm-hmm. And we land in Wick, and I can't remember what the name of that airplane show was, but there was some airplane TV show where it's talking about, you know, the different crossings, and it had this one FBO guy that it featured on the show, and he's, you know, he's a little out there, and it's the guy at Wick, and what he does is he rents you know, your survival suits, so your oceanic survival suits and a raft, et cetera, if you want, because, you know, in crossing the pond, you know, it's totally safe to do, but, you know, we have to make sure we have the correct equipment on board.
Especially when you only have one engine.
Well, there you go. I mean, that airplane doesn't know it's over water, right? And so it's, you know, so we go there to Wick and we get a raft, and we have our oceanic survival suits. And in Europe, I mean, look, and I say this very much as an amateur, but in Europe, when you file your flight plan, differently than in North America, in Europe, you sort of give your plan to the people at the FBO, and they file it. And so we give, you know, all our info to this guy, and I can't remember his name. I think it might be Andy, but we give it to him. And, you know, in Wick, we're in this, I call it a terminal building. It's this like wooden, as I remember it, a wooden building. It's all from World War II. You know, the hangars are all World War II hangars. That airport, I think, was a Spitfire and Hurricane base. And the airplane that, someone on your podcast is going to correct me, but I think it was a Hurricane that spotted the Bismarck. Oh, cool. Launched from that airbase. Oh, wow. And still pillboxes there. Like it's, I wish I would have spent more time there. Like it was really cool to see. And so we give him our flight plan, and he takes about 3 steps and turns around and, you know, I'm hearing beep, 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 you know, and we're thinking, we're looking at each other like, what did we do wrong here? And what we had filed was to go from there to Reykjavik, from Reykjavik to Iqaluit in Canada, the old Frobisher Bay. And then eventually we're going to take the airplane to Levaero headquarters in Thunder Bay. And because the raft had a compressed gas component to the assembly, I guess in shipping with, the FedExes and Purelators of the world, it's considered dangerous goods because of the compressed gas. Yeah. So it's really tough for him to get his stuff back in a timely manner. And so he, through some colorful conversation, let us know that if we wanted to take his stuff, his survival equipment, we would have to go to Goose Bay, Labrador in Canada as our, drop-off point. That was not what we had planned. It had a little bit more open water flying than we had planned. And when you're crossing the pond and last minute you get told that, you're not doing what you had planned for the last several weeks, you have to do something different. You come down to, okay, we need to now map this out to see, one, can we do this? Can we do it safely? And is this the right thing to do for us? Right. And so again, I defer all of that to our captain that was flying, John, and he, to his credit, this stuff doesn't faze him, and he's a professional, and plotted it out and said, listen, it's totally doable and totally safe. Are you okay with it? And of course I said, look, I trust you implicitly, and let's go. And so we launched from there to Reykjavik, and as you're sort of leaving the European coast, you're looking down, you see ships and oil rigs and whatever it may be, and slowly you start to not see anything. You're going, is right. Yeah. And so you're going like, all right, I am above the ocean.
So we're doing this, huh?
Yeah, right. Like we're committed now at this point. And so, long story short, we landed in Reykjavik and, do our thing there. And next step after that was Narsarsuaq, Greenland.
Oh, what?
And, right. Never, you hit it on the head. Never in my life had I ever thought that my day-to-day or my job or my just travel life would ever bring me to Greenland. It wasn't on the radar.
Was it green? I've always heard it's not green.
So Iceland is green, Greenland is icy.
Of course, right? That makes sense. 100% makes sense. Yeah.
Right. And I will say, and I've got to do this. I've got the GoPro footage and photos and all that stuff. I've got it somewhere. I need to put together a little bit of a video of our crossing. It's going to be amateur hour, big time, but I need to put that together because that approach into Narsarsuaq through the fjords and the glaciers and the glacial, rivers and whatnot. Holy moly, was that beautiful. That was one of the most beautiful sights I'd ever seen. I want to go back to Greenland, and spend a little time, touring around there. It was just beautiful, very remote, very isolated,
just a little bit,
and so that airstrip in Narsarsuaq was, very much purpose built for World War II and airplanes going over. It's now very commonly a ferry. For those ferrying airplanes across the pond, it's a common, that's generally what it's used for. There is some local, I think, Dash 8 traffic through there, but it's one that ferry pilots use a lot. And so, we landed there and spent a little time, and then from there landed in our first North American point of entry was Goose Bay, Labrador, which is, a civilian and a military air base there. And then from there was then off to Thunder Bay, and Goose to Thunder Bay was actually our longest leg.
Was it really? Wow.
It's just, you forget how large Canada is land-wise. It's from a size standpoint, it's the second biggest country in the world. And you forget about that because, 90-something% of our population lives within, 100 miles of the U.S. border. Yeah. So you forget about, you forget about the stuff up north a little bit. And I'll tell you what, it's beautiful. It's picturesque. I've gotten a lot of time to, I've had a lot of flying. That PC-12 has taken me to cities and towns and villages and outposts in Canada that I never would have ever gotten to see in my life if it wasn't for the PC-12. And so I'm ultimately thankful for that. And so we drop off that airplane in Thunder Bay. And that's the end of our pond crossing story.
Awesome.
I mean, I'm sure I left out a lot of details along the way, but it was an awesome experience.
That's awesome.
You know, I'd like to say I want to do it again. I don't know time wise when that could be, but it was an awesome experience.
That's cool. You got that on me. I've never done a pond crossing before. I've flown to Bermuda, I've flown to Barbados, I've flown over the ocean, but never to go to Europe. So you have that on me. So that's exciting.
Well, I think pilot-wise, you've got a lot of stuff on me. So,
hey, man, I'm trying to give you a victory. All right.
I'll take it.
That's funny. Well, cool. I'll do a little quick rapid-fire section real quick, if you don't mind. I honestly don't know what I'm going to ask, but we'll see where it goes.
All right.
All right, cool. Are you an iPhone or an Android guy?
iPhone.
All right. If you had to choose one airline to fly on, business class all the way across the world, what would it be?
Oh, man. From an experience standpoint, I'll tell you what, for working in the industry and traveling a bunch, I haven't traveled a lot of those sort of high-end international carriers. I mean, most of my traveling is on Air Canada, to be quite honest. But, you know, you hear the Emirates and those similar airlines to fly in those, you know, bedrooms, the flying bedrooms there. I mean,
that'd be crazy.
That's an awesome experience, I think.
That'd be pretty cool. All right, you're in the airport, you're traveling, you need to grab some food. What's your go-to airport food?
Oh man, my go-to airport food. I mean, it's going to sound a little goofy. I like to have traveling so much. You get to have some of the perks, and one of the ones I'm really fortunate about is getting to go into the lounges, the airline lounges. I just like to go have a soup. I mean, I'm old school like that. I go and I have a minestrone soup or a chicken noodle soup. That's kind of my go-to. If I'm in Charlotte, there's a good barbecue joint there.
There you go, my hometown.
There you go. So it's awesome. Every airport's got a couple different ones.
Yeah, they do. Mine's Chick-fil-A. If I ever see a Chick-fil-A, I'm always there.
Yeah, there you go.
It's very, very basic, but it's what I love.
Nothing wrong with it.
All right, so let's see what else we got here. What is how about this? This is kind of a basketball question. Give me 3 reasons why Kemba Walker is better than Kyle Lowry.
Kyle Lowry's better than Kemba Walker.
I know. I was thinking you said it. Agree to disagree. Kemba Walker is the best point guard in the East, minus Kyrie Irving.
We politely agree to disagree.
That's funny. All right, here, let's keep going. What is your favorite airline livery outside of Air Canada? Because I figured you're probably going to say Air Canada's new one.
Old school metallic American Airlines.
Okay, there you go. I like that one too. I grew up in Charlotte, so all I saw was US Airways. So the US Airways one always kind of grew on me. And then I like the new American one too. I like the flag on the back of the tail. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, it is a nice one.
What's your favorite airline to fly? Is it Air Canada? Because you do it so often.
I do it so often, and the perks and the lounges and all that stuff. And I'll tell you what, it's they're pretty friendly. They've got great coverage. You know, anywhere I need to get to, it's generally an option through them.
Would you rather fly the PC-12 on a trip or be flown on a PC-12 on a trip?
Great question. I can tell you I am not checked out on the PC-12.
Perfect world. You are checked out on the PC-12.
I answered this way. My goal is to get checked out on the PC-12 and fly that PC-12 on a trip.
Nice. Okay, cool. Would you rather
sitting in the back, right? Yeah. I mean, you do that on any airplane.
Right. Would you rather, let's see, you have to go somewhere crazy and you need to take a private jet or a PC-12. What would be your dream aircraft to take?
Where are we going?
Tahiti.
Whew.
Or Bora Bora, whatever. But just think the PC-12 could make it there nonstop. Everything's the same. Just what plane would you want to be on?
I've got a bit of a bucket list item. I want to do an around the world trip in a PC-12.
Okay, that'd be cool. Amelia Earhart.
I mean, just like that. Yeah. You know, I think she's had a cool one. There's the current president of POPA, the Pilatus Owners and Pilots Association. I'm not sure if he's finished it, but before the holidays, he had started, I think, his 3rd around the world trip in a PC-12.
Well, if he needs a co-pilot, let him know I got a couple thousand hours in a PC-12.
There you go, man. That for sure is a bucket list item. Right. I mean, look, you talk about, the Falcons and the Gulfstreams. I mean, it'd be fun to fly on those, but at a certain point, I mean, they're a little bit similar in that
Right.
sense. From an adventure standpoint, yeah, around the world in the PC-12 would be awesome.
That'd be cool. What's your favorite airport in Canada that you've flown to? Or outpost, since you said you go to weird places too.
So we landed a PC-12 in Kamsack, Saskatchewan.
Oh, cool.
And-
Definitely heard of that.
Yeah, you definitely have not.
Yeah.
It's one of those airports where when you land, well, there's no taxiway, there's no turnaround area. You land. When we landed, there were pickup trucks that stopped at the end of the runway on the road and to take pictures of us.
That's
They
hilarious.
said that this is the biggest airplane that has landed at this airport since the Queen of England was there in like the 70s.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so that was an interesting experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's different airports. I mean, we landed in Pemberton, which is, kind of the closest airport to Whistler, in British Columbia near Vancouver, ski resort area in the Rocky Mountains there. I mean, so that was interesting, and just navigating, low level, the Rockies to get there. Our SARS walk was unbelievably beautiful. I could probably go on.
That's awesome. I think you named a good amount. That's pretty cool. I have one more rapid fire question for you. What is your least favorite? Actually, I have two more. What is your least favorite airline?
Oh man, I can't do that. Because you know what's going to happen? I'm going to say it, and then they're going to hear it, and they're going to bounce me off some flight where I need to get somewhere. No,
that's you thinking that airlines actually listen to my podcast.
I'll tell you what, when you get to 60,000, everyone's going to be listening to your podcast. I don't know if it's airline wise. I mean, I think I will say any airline that sort of doesn't pay attention to the interior experience to customers. I think what they, and I know you've got your hate on for a certain model out there, but I would say that I think airlines sometimes lose sight of that customer experience, and they don't take into account how many nervous travelers fly on their airplanes. And I'll give you that that sort of specific reasoning is from a comfort standpoint. And I can say this when, from personal family relatability, like my mom is not, she's a very nervous flyer. And so if you get onto an airplane where the table tray is busted or like something from the overhead panel is hanging, or, the window shutter doesn't work, or the cushion has fallen off, it's stuff that absolutely does not affect the safety of the airplane or the flyability of that airplane or anything like that. But the perception to somebody who then sits in and says, this thing is falling apart, is very real. And I think airlines miss the point on that a lot. I have a bunch of friends that work in the airline industry. So just from a helping standpoint, I try and sort of take photos and send that to them because, it doesn't bother me, but I know that it bothers people around me that might be nervous. And so, no one should be nervous in an airplane because it's ultimately very safe.
Exactly.
So which airline do I would say the ones that don't pay enough attention to the customer experience.
Gotcha. That's a good answer. I can dig that answer. And last one is and as you know, I don't like the Piaggio. I have for no reason whatsoever. I think it's ugly. It's probably the best plane ever, but I just don't know. But anyways, preface it with that. What is the ugliest airplane you've ever seen?
Oh man. Ugliest?
Yeah.
There are some pretty ugly paint schemes out there.
Yeah, you got that right.
Some of them are on my favorite airplanes too. But, oh man. I mean, I'll say this. I think when in the ultralight world, those flying lawnmower versions of ultralights scare me.
Yeah. I don't really want to get in one of those.
So I'm going to, for lack of a better answer, I'm going to pull those generally into.
Sounds good. Well, Stan, those are all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you want to touch on or add to the podcast at all?
No, man, this was an awesome experience. It's the first podcast interview I've ever done, and
the first of many.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on, and it was a lot of fun.
Good, man. I'm glad you enjoyed. I enjoyed talking to you, and I think it's cool to show that you can have dreams of wanting to be an Air Canada heavy pilot making millions of dollars, and then kind of going back and be like, hey, I don't know if I want to do this, and still finding a good career in aviation. So I really do think that people are going to listen to this and kind of just open their eyes a little bit, that there's more than just flying, and maybe it'll save someone from getting burnt out in the actual flying aspect of it, and they can find a role in sales or marketing or whatever they want.
Totally. And I, I'm a living proof that you can pivot within the industry. And if anyone's ever got any questions about getting into it, or about, switching sort of focus within the industry, I mean, they can reach out to you through me, or, to me through you, or through my Instagram, whatever it may be. I'm always happy to talk to people about that kind of stuff. I got a lot of time for that. Perfect.
Well, sounds good, man. I appreciate having you on, and thanks again, man. I look forward to this coming out.
Thanks, Justin. Have a great day, man.
You too. See ya.
See you, buddy.
Aviation, that is a wrap of episode number 52. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And like I said earlier, if you did enjoy it, please leave us a review on iTunes. Check out our website, pilottopilot.hq.com. Email me at pilottopilot.hq@gmail.com, and check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/pilottopilot. Happy flying, Avination.